My name is Lori Power. My company is MP Benefits, and I'm a group benefit consultant. What I do every week is I love to connect people. That's my motivation. I love connecting people. And then on top of that, I love to have a conversation. I love gathering people's stories. I like the learning and sharing. Now, Dawn and I recently reconnected a couple of months ago and realized that we had known each other in what I lovingly call BC19, have reconnected now. And what strikes me is that she was my productivity ninja back in the day, and she taught me some really excellent productivity tips and stuff that I still use to this day on a daily basis. I have it ingrained in me. I've made it a habit, and it has made me more productive. So it is no surprise that her most current endeavor in business is the most brilliant idea ever in its simplicity. How would you like to be introduced?
That's good enough. I think we're there. I'll just add that I started a business in the early days of COVID, building on about 25 years of productivity training and coaching. So I had been set to retire, and then COVID, and now I'm in a startup. So I'll talk more about that as Lori asks questions.
All right. Well, we'll start with it's called a focus bubble. Designed for leaders, designed for teams when you need to focus. And I'm going to preface this by I've just finished my coaching certificate. And I was saying to Dawn, when you're coaching, you're supposed to practice what you're putting out there. And part of those four pillars is to be able to reflect, to inquire, to take the time to pause before you act. I have a hard time with the pause. The focus bubble allows us as leaders to focus, to pause, to get the job done. What was the impetus for starting focus bubbles? And what's the vision for how they will work for leaders?
Yes. And so the start of the bubbles came from all of my clients during the early days of COVID coming to me and saying, hey, we're dispersing our teams, or I'm overwhelmed, I'm stuck, a lot of negative stuff going on. You guys all remember. And we were bombarded with webinars and free information and all kinds of learning opportunities, but it was hard to onboard that during all the stress. And so when I went out and surveyed my client base, and what I heard from them is they just needed headspace. They needed a little bit of white space in their calendar. They needed time to think and process and to actually do the work. And I said, well, I can't gift you time, but just for fun, why don't we get on a Zoom call exactly like this? Just come together and with people who didn't necessarily know each other and do our own work. So I would facilitate a 5-minute warm up where we did either mindfulness or stretching or a question of the day, just like Lori did. And we did a lot of this or that questions. So as you were saying, we'd like say book or movie, or, ice cream or chips was one of them. And just to get some camaraderie and some connection. And then we would go on mute and do our work and then come back and report out. What was your success rate? And obviously encouraging people to turn off your notifications, get your phone out of sight, and do a whole bunch of other stuff to protect that focus bubble. And that quickly evolved into demand for several of these a week. We were doing it once a week for free, like let's do it for fun. And now we offer 15 per week on a membership-based service. And we have a full client base who pays a membership fee, just like you do for the gym. It's like Peloton for work. You're at home, you got an accountability structure, you got a schedule, you've paid for it. You show up, you do your work, and we've got them ranging from 60 minutes to 3 hours, depending on what people need to get done. And it's so simple and it's so powerful and it's working.
And that's just the thing, right? It's simple, powerful, and working for corporations, for organizations that they're stuck in that. Lisa and I talk about this all the time, right? They're stuck between, are they going to pull these people back into the physical workspace? Or are they going to keep them remote? What do you do with the teams? Again, you've envisioned what that's going to look like, and you've created a solution. Take me through those team solutions.
Fundamentally, at the core of success of any work environment, whether you're thinking hybrid or remote or all intact, is autonomy, is right. It's choice of how we as individuals want to work, where we want to work. And ultimately, I'm a huge believer and proponent and support or coach for a ROWE, results only work environment. So there's lots of great writings from these two consultants who built this philosophy in the US. They used to be at Best Buy and they created this ROWE, row work environment. So really, if we think about, it's not about bums and seats. It's not about where you're sitting or watching employees work in a certain way or having that physical accountability to be in a space. It's about what they produce. Like ultimately, if we can shift our leadership and our management and our self-management to outcomes-based impact that we make and not hours in the day and where we're located. So focus bubbles is just a tool to support that kind of approach because it gives people a space to come together, and that kind of accountability where they're choosing to come is really powerful. One interesting thing that I learned is that a third of my client base in the bubbles are attention deficit disorder. And this was a real surprise to me, but one time in the bubble, someone said something and everybody went, adult diagnosed with ADD, and all these hands went up. In that one, there was 20 people. And in that particular bubble, 12 people put their hand up and said, I'm using this to keep me like focused, accountable. And there's just something about that strikes me as those are people who are struggling in a lot of different settings. So if you have that yourself or any, of your team, it's just something to think about.
That's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I just learned that. So I'm so excited. I'm like, now I have to figure out why psychologically, I know some of the brain science, but now I want to explore how do I connect and support these communities of folks who are struggling with ADD and some other like non-neurotypical things. Or just a couple of people have said, you know what, I've dealt with clinical depression, and especially during the pandemic, and having this little place to come and hear people laugh and see smiling faces has been a lifesaver. It's a little lifeline for them in their day. And they come every day to a bubble and do their work.
Imagine what that's doing for their culture. Imagine what it does for the corporate culture to be able to be results orientated, to know that I'm coming in and I'm going to be able to build on success.
Yeah.
We're going to walk away with a win of the day. What's the best lesson that you're learning through this building, through this in endeavoring to enable people to be productive?
That's a big question. I'm going to say the first thing that popped to mind is time defense. So I've worked with 10,000 people over the course of my career, coaching and training on productivity. And what I see you guys all doing well, and myself included, is making a list of things to do. So we're all good at our list making, whether it lives on paper or inside of an app. But where we fall down is then aligning those tasks with the actual time blocks in your calendar. So making the commitment and making sure that matches up with the energy you have available, the priority of that task is, the time that you have available, because if it's a 5-minute window, you can only do certain things versus having a 3-hour window, right? And so seeing people use focus bubbles as a time defense to allocate the time in their calendar, which I understood to start out, okay, if we allocate it, it matches up with our task list, we do the thing. But then I also saw the benefit of once it's in your calendar, it prevents other things from encroaching. So, and you all, who's really good at putting things in their calendar, like when it's a commitment to somebody else, you show up for your meetings, you show up for your webinars. Yeah. Like your calendar's like, you honor it, right? Who's really good at putting time blocks in for themselves and then honoring those?
Guess why?
Yeah, it's really tough. It's like, oh yeah, Friday at 3:00, I really know I want to do my weekly industry reading or whatever. And then 3:00 rolls around and some client demand comes your way or whatever. But if you've plugged it in and you've committed to showing up to a group like this, then you're, well, about 90 times more likely to do it.
The hard part I find too, Dawn, and again, this is where the focus bubbles create that ability to honor it, is there are loads of times. So I'm good at putting it into my calendar. I'm good at saying, this is what I'm going to do on this day of the week, right? Chantel's nodding her head because she knows too. But then a client will email or call and say, I really need to meet, or I really need to do this. And all of a sudden their fire becomes my inferno, and I will leave it go. And I perhaps won't put it back in the calendar at another date. So there is something that I'm not honoring myself. I'm not enabling myself to meet that commitment to grow, learn, and be better.
And we all do that for a couple of reasons. One is easy to react, and it feels good to react to a client and meet their needs. That gives us a little endorphin and dopamine boost, which our bodies love. And so that feels great, right? And then you can check something off the list and you feel like you accomplished something. But ultimately, you might be sacrificing some more proactive or strategic or higher priority thing that you're doing. But yeah, who's done that? Like, we all want to respond to our clients super fast, and that's part of why you're successful. It's finding that balance. And so here's the biggest learning, going back to that question, here's my biggest learning is I'm hosting 90% of the bubbles. And so I'm inside a focus bubble about 15, 17 hours a week, which means I cannot use those hours to schedule meetings or show up for webinars and all of those other things. And I thought it was going to feel like I had my hands in handcuffs and I wasn't going to get anything done, because while I'm in the bubble, I'm also attentive to the group to a certain extent. But it has fundamentally shifted because I'm a super responder. I want to be right. I want to be the fastest one to get back to my clients. But when I'm inside the bubble and I allocate a specific task, I don't open my email and I don't respond to my email. And everyone waits the hour, or it's no one has felt let down, and I haven't felt restricted, and that was shocking to me.
I can relate to that because sometimes you want to answer that phone, even though you have voicemail.
Yep.
Right? Sometimes you don't realize that your email will wait and people on the other side are okay. If it's an emergency, they will find another way to meet with you. What is your biggest challenge to productivity right now?
And I think that it is being flexible to, I mean, I have clients in different time zones and different formats and different levels of urgency. So it's being flexible to accommodate and support while also maintaining my own structure and format and schedule.
You're not alone. You're amongst like-minded people. How about yourself, Margaret?
It's overwhelmed, and then there's 100 things calling for my attention, and so I'm just going, I catch myself after the fact jumping from one thing to another, and then at the end of the day I go, oh my god, like I still didn't get that thing done that was the number one thing on my desk today.
Well, it's almost like we're teaching ourselves to be attention deficit, aren't we? Because we are jumping from task to task. And when we feel that overwhelming come up our throat and just almost drown us in that, what's your take on that, Dawn? How do we overcome?
You nailed it. It's exactly that. We are training our brains because you're kind of multitasking. It sounds a little bit like, Margaret, you're hopping back and forth. And then so we are short circuiting our brains by training our brain to have a shorter and shorter attention span. Yeah. And we actually get rewarded for that. Again, the dopamine cycle rewards that, but it ultimately fails us because we're also releasing cortisol, which then has, it's a stress hormone. And so if you have even any opportunity to identify when you're multitasking, and you sound very self-aware, which is brilliant, but even just generating a little bit of awareness of when you're making those quick transitions and trying to stay, even setting a timer for 5 minutes, 7 minutes, short periods of time. But also back to what you said, Lori, about pausing. This is what I heard in the focus bubble this morning, is that so many people are overwhelmed, can't decide what to do next, and they need to step out of their business. For one person said, I'm going to book an Airbnb for 4 days and just go and think about my business. And I thought that was a brilliant. Who's done that? Who's taken a little sabbatical just to think about your business? A couple of days? Anyone? Pretty magical. Bob, do you want to comment on that?
I do it fairly often, to be honest, and not just with my business, but with my person as well. just to make sure that I'm on track, that I'm using my time as best as I possibly can at all times. But it does create issues because I tend to overload my plate. I'm pretty good at dealing with tasks and keeping on track and on target for the tasks that I set out on a daily basis. But for instance, if I'm required to go visit a client, I inadvertently say, geez, I'm over on this side of town. I've got 3 other things that I could fit in here on this same schedule. And I'm doing those. So it just adds that much more to the plate that needs to be done at the end of the day. But that's kind of a downfall that I have. But going away and thinking constantly about how to better use your time and how to achieve what needs to be achieved, I probably do that on a daily basis.
Wow, that's fantastic.
That is really good. Well, Bob knows me for quite a while now, and the moment that it comes up, because it's come up before, we've talked about it in our groups of, taking those days to just think. That is so stressful for me to even contemplate. Like, Lisa, you work with so many companies. What is their challenge? Like, are they taking that time? What challenges do you see coming out from the corporate side for those leaders?
Yeah, I have my own challenges and then client challenges too. And I think for leaders, for a lot of the leaders that I'm working with right now, it's trying to take care of everybody else and make sure everybody else is okay, without really looking at themselves and are they okay? And do they need to take a step back? And this came up in the every other Wednesday conversation yesterday, Lori, about the whole, renew, refresh and stuff like that. Like what Bob's talking about, those clarity breaks, those are gold, really, to just go for myself, because I have shiny squirrel syndrome and lots of ideas all the time. If I can go sit in a coffee shop with just a notebook and I don't have my phone, I don't have my laptop, and I just start to flesh out some of these ideas and then decide which one I want to run with, kind of helps to keep me on track and lets me use my ideation strength and really get that going, gets the creative juices going. But I think as far as the corporate world and that productivity, it's that so much is unknown. Can we go back to the office? Should we go back to the office? Do we bring people in? What are we missing if we don't bring them back to the office? The water cooler conversations, Lori and I have had this conversation too, but there are some people that just do better at home. And that whole row type work environment, I think now it's getting leaders and senior leaders that maybe have come from a different generation to really understand the benefits of all of that without it going, well, no, if you're not here from 8 to 4:30, you're not working. Really?
Well, and this is where I think Dawn has really honed in on those teams, those team bubbles, right? To be able to say that, yes, if we're going to continue to have some staff, all staff working remotely, then let's create an environment that adds to the team culture. What's been the feedback? We've talked a little bit about the feedback of individual leaders coming in and using this space for what they need it for. What's coming back for those teams, for those corporate teams that you enable?
Yeah, it's been interesting and it hasn't been entirely successful. The leaders buy in, and then when they filter it down to the staff and the staff have the opportunity to come and they are essentially gifted, here is this tool for you to use. There are people who love it and embrace it. And then there's people who are like, well, is my manager reporting on my showing up for this? And are you like telling my manager that what I worked on in the bubble? And it's like, so we have to get over some of those barriers, just to be really candid. But to what Lisa said is it does create the water cooler opportunities. Now they're in bubbles with strangers, not just within their own corporation. We have offered private bubbles. We're not there yet, but they're showing up with, in open enrollment bubbles, and they see 3 of their colleagues and then they see a bunch of other people. And people seem to appreciate that more than some of the kind of more insular team stuff that I have done. They like the broader network for whatever reason. Maybe it gives them more anonymity or just more connection points. But it tends to be I thought it was going to be all extroverts showing up, but it's mostly introverts. It's people who don't want to go to the office and have a lot of conversation, but they still need a little connection.
Yeah.
And I love something else Lisa said is clarity breaks. I don't want to lose, I'm going to jot that down, but I like that term you used, Lisa, is having a clarity break. And
Lisa
so,
has the best ideas.
yeah,
We'll just steal from her all day
I'm
long.
writing that one down. Love that.
One of the things I often struggle with, and I think I'm going to talk to William and Chantel and Margaret most of all, because we're all in similar industry, is information overload. And the ability, I find myself collecting so much information, like how much I have files of saved PDFs that I'm sure I could live 10 million lifetimes and never get through. Like, honestly, I have to take my son to the doctor this afternoon, and I'm so excited because I'm bringing reading material.
Those little pockets of downtime, those little, that you're kind of forced into a pause. There you go. You're getting a little pause at the doctor's office.
Yeah. We can be more strategic about it,
Yeah.
right? Like we can be strategic about it. What are some common misconceptions that people have when you're first putting the idea out to them? Let's talk about the misconceptions. Let's reverse move that so that it's not a misconception anymore.
Common reaction is, well, I'm on Zoom all day already. I don't want to be on more Zoom calls, and I don't think a Zoom call is going to help me do anything differently or better. It's going to be a source of distraction, those kinds of things. And really, I want to be super clear that this is not a giant advertisement for focus bubbles, right? This is about thinking about ways that you can create your own focus bubble, whatever that looks like. It's about preserving your own time and attention. And if you want to use that as a tool, great. But you can partner with someone in here and call Lori and set up a time that you guys can create your own little accountability. And lots of people have done that during COVID. And I hope it continues into the future, that you found these little pockets or pods of people that you can connect with and help be accountable. Accountability buddies is really what it's about. So resistance comes from more Zoom calls and just thinking it's too easy. It's too easy and too good to be true. And then they come, like the one person, before I launched this as an actual business, a good friend was like, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And then, so she came to a few and then she's like, oh, and she bought a year subscription. She's like, I get it. I'm doing it. It's changed my life. So,
well, and I know I'm going to pick on you a bit, Tracy. I know that you were separated from a team environment of what you had for a long time and have only just started to get back into the team. Wouldn't this have been an awesome way of connecting and keeping that culture within the different members?
Yeah, I think so. Would have helped with the mental as well.
Mental health has deteriorated 400% in the last year and a half. That's a lot. 400% deterioration.
There's a really good article by Adam Grant called about languishing, kind of the sensation, as Lisa's nodding, you've probably read it. It's worth looking up Adam Grant languishing, just as a good descriptor, and such a great word. But that's the check-in points that we do inside the bubble help just keep people feel grounded and connected, right? And have an opportunity to say, you know what, I don't feel great today. And I'm happy that I have a place to come and share that with people. It's very short. We only spend 5 minutes up front, but it's still an outlet for people to share.
So I'm just thinking, the way that you set up your focus bubbles, though, you're just spending a few minutes at the top, kind of at the beginning of the meeting, and then you just mute everybody, and then everybody just kind of does their own thing, and you meet back like, half an hour or whatever later.
Yep.
So everybody's still kind of in their own little office at home. They're still doing their own work, but it's just because they're seeing other people doing the same thing. They're probably seeing more of that connection, is what I'm guessing. And that's why it's been so successful.
It is. There's the science of mimicry. So it's amazing that if you see me sip my water without even saying anything, if you have water, you're very likely to. There we go. And when we glance up and see people on the screen, like you see concentrating faces and you see activity. And we also have in the middle, we have active breaks. So we have a dance party on Wednesdays. And we put on a song and everybody dances, and they might go slightly off screen if they're feeling, or they might hide their video. I was so nervous about doing that. It took me 6 months to implement that. And it is now the most popular bubble. Will get like a good 2/3 of the whole entire membership showing up because they want to do the dance party. So it's little tiny things like that, or starting with a desk stretch or a visualization or mindfulness. We're all trying to build in mindfulness into our lives, or many of us are, but not succeeding. So we do what we call habit stacking, layering in these little things, drinking water, mindfulness, stretching, that we want to do every day. But if you are showing up for the bubble, you're going to be supported collectively to do it and be accountable. And then you also have to indicate what you're working on. So you have to make a commitment. You have to be intentional and focused. I plan to do this. And then at the end, you can say where you were at with your success of completing that task.
Oh, that gives everybody a win. And, it brings me back so much so to the original items that you taught me so long ago. Is it's okay to shut your email off and allow yourself 45 minutes to work, or however long, then reward yourself with an apple or a whatever, and then turn your email on. Like
Or a coffee crisp.
Or a coffee crisp, or some frozen chocolate.
I was actually going to say, on the note of mindfulness, we actually did, and I'm not sure if William, if you were in that session with the heart math.
Yeah.
I love heart math.
So it's just another point too, where it reminds me of the, like, in the day when you kind of just feel everything's just like coming at you from 30 different directions, and like Lori said, there's so much to read, so much to do. Sometimes I find I'll just stop and do that 5 minutes heart math where you breathe in for 5, hold it for 5, exhale for 5, and just say, okay, one at a time, and just prioritize and sort of get back on track. And I think that's just really helped when you feel overwhelmed, just to stop and just breathe for a minute. And it just even close your eyes for that, 15 seconds, whatever it is, if you do it a few times. And it seems to just reset and recharge for a minute. Because we don't always have that hour to go and lay on, do our yoga and do whatever we need to unwind at the day. So, and I too have that stack of reading at my night table that's all work, and it's like, what is this? That's what I do. But it's just finding little bits in the day to just you for a minute.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big commitment. It can be, I call it micro meditation or a micro mindfulness. I have a practice of holding I have a porcelain tea mug that I love the feel of it. And when there's a hot beverage in it, the smell, and so it's just a minute with my eyes closed and breathing in. And it's really grounding. It's so simple. Sometimes that's all I can do in a day, and it works. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that.
I have essential oils always sitting beside me. This is like a lava stone with just like essential oils, and every once in a while I'll just
like
breathe it.
That's great.
Such a great idea.
Yeah.
I grew herbs for the first time this year, and I decided to bring them into the house. Some are doing well, some not so much. Although I do try to talk to them every day to encourage them. But I think I've drowned some and put the others in a drought. But one of the things that I was doing was taking a bit of the rosemary, a bit of the sage, and really just rubbing them together and just like, so just like what you're saying. And it gave me some extra oomph because I grew them, right? So they were mine, and I could, and I could enjoy them for what they were meant to be enjoyed for. Last words, what question would you like answered, Dawn? What's a burning question that someday you just want answered?
Oh my goodness. Well, I get, my biggest question is how do I communicate my business, right, to people who just go, yeah, that sounds really stupid, or any insights from all you brilliant minds. What could I say to you that would tweak your interest in something as simple as this concept? William, you're unmuted.
Sure, pick on me first. It's just the whole concept, the whole idea just is so intriguing to me, because it's, like you said, it's taking that time, it's blocking it. Because I know I'm the kind of person that if it's blocked in the calendar, and Tanya can attest to this, I'm pretty rigid when it comes to that calendar, So I think, and especially I'm also a person who suffers from ADHD, just knowing that there's other people out there helping me to kind of focus a little bit more is a great idea. So I don't know. I can't say anything very specific, but those are kind of my thoughts right there.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't expect anyone to create my whole marketing plan in 30 seconds. So.
No, but give me about 5 days. And no,
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you determine the length of time of one of your work spurts or
Yeah.
bubbles?
Like, how do you is the question, how do you personally design your own focus bubbles?
No. How have you set them and why?
Okay. Yeah. So we did some kind of pattern checking and collected data around people's peak times. And we're also trying to accommodate for 3 time zones. So we have 2 to 3 in each every day and an evening one, so that there's flexibility for people to choose. But we know some people are morning people and some people are afternoon people and some people are evening people. So
I actually meant the length of the time. Sorry.
Oh, mornings we do longer because we do 90 minutes to 3 hours because that's what people demanded, because that's usually the vast majority of population has more focus in the first half of the day, because decision fatigue and general fatigue will hit, and then you need to refresh. And then in the afternoons, we tend to do shorter just because that's the attention span.
And the nice thing is that you get to choose.
Thank you.
So I will encourage you. I have put Dawn's LinkedIn and I have put her website in the chat bar. As I think you experience it, share it, talk it. And we're going to pull Dawn back because she's still my productivity ninja, because you're always going to be my ninja.
There is a 2-week free trial on the website if you want to do that. But anyone who comes to something like this, I'd like to give a little bit more. And it really is something that the more you do it, give yourself some time to embed it, is better. And it's frictionless, no credit card required. I don't collect stuff or bother you with things. It's just for you to try.
Oh, this has been wonderful. This fits so well into that culture piece that we talk about all the time, Lisa. I like how to create that environment that actually works in a non-aggressive way. Thanks so much, Dawn, for coming in. Thanks to everybody for coming in. If you've liked it, tell a friend. Maybe you'll come back again. And until next time, I hope to see you all again soon.